Hola, ¿cómo están?
In this
En esta
class,
clase vamos a
we're
empezar
going
a
to start
trabajar
working
con
on the KB
databases
in
y notebooks
Genexus to be
para
able to
poder llegar a
obtain,
obtener
a
en
few
un
classes
cuarto
later,
clases más
the web
adelante la
application that
aplicación web
implements these four
completamente, los
screens that we
cuatro
were talking
recursos de los
about
que veníamos
for desktop
hablando
size.
para tamaño desktop. Después de eso
After that,
veremos cómo hacer
we'll see how to
variables
make the
de
application vary
clasificación y
according
dejarle
to
el
the screen
tamaño de
size
pantalla para que
so that it
pueda
can be run and displayed
visualizarse
perfectly on
perfectamente
phone
en
or
un monitor
tablet-sized
de tamaño
devices,
teléfono o
always
de
for the web
tamaño tablet,
application.
siempre hablando de la aplicación web.
And then,
Y
later
luego,
on,
más
near the end
adelante,
of the course, we'll
sobre
see how
todo
to
en el
make the
curso,
application
veremos cómo
itself run
hacer que la
natively on those
aplicación en sí
devices.
misma se ejecute de forma nativa en esos dispositivos. Bueno, así que
Okay,
vamos a empezar
so
con
let's
ir a
start by
Genexus.
going to Genexus. And note that I created a KB named Travel Agency, where inside a transactions folder, I created the three transactions that, in a simplified way, will register the data in the back office. I populated each one with data from a data provider, and applied the work with web pattern. So if I run, we see the work with of the tourist attractions. And if I choose this one, we see here the photo that will be used for the customer-facing application, the one we're trying to implement, the name of the attraction, the rating, the title that will be shown on the attractions page, the information that will be listed on that page, and if we go to the View tab, here we see this information related to the tourist attraction that will be shown in a carousel on this page that can then be scrolled. What we see running here is the back office that we know that the web.NET generator uses by default for its front end. And what's the design system object that determines the style of the user interface of this back office? If we look at the properties of the attraction transaction, we see that the one with the name style indicates the object with the same name as the KB. If we go to the properties of the Work with Attraction web panel, for style, we see the same travel agency object. The same goes for the view, as well as for the other transactions and web panels and objects with an interface that are created for the back office. We see this in the style property of the KB version. Remember that this DSO object is the only one that's created by default when creating any KB, and that it takes the same name. If we open it, we see that the Tokens tab is empty. But in the Styles tab, it has this rule, which indicates that all the tokens and styles of this other design system object, which is in the Genexus Unanimo module, which will be imported. And where is this Genexus Unanimo module? It came installed by default in every KB, and it can be found below the References node. We open it and see that it's read-only, but in addition to its specific token and style definitions, it's importing two other DSOs. These ones, which are in the same module. So it builds on top of these other two. On the other hand, if we open these ones that we see here, what we'll get is this tree, where Unanimo Mobile only imports Unanimo, and Unanimo Angular imports the mobile one and also Unanimo controls. If Unanimo Web will be the one used by default in the web front end, because as we saw, it uses a DSO with the same name as the KB that imports it, clearly, Unanimo Angular will be the default also for the web front end, but Angular and Unanimo Mobile will be the default for mobile front end for all platforms, both for Android and for Apple. As we don't have any front end for these platforms yet, we can't see these DSOs in action. We won't want to use them anyway. We'll want to build the customer-facing application that will have another design system, the one designed by Chechu, and we've been analyzing. So we'll create the DSO for Angular, which is the platform we'll focus on most of the course, from scratch. And then, at the end, we'll see the native case. To clearly separate the objects that will be specific to our customer-facing application from all the default objects in the KB, and from those of the back office, we'll create a module that for now I'll call Travel Agency. And inside it, I'll create another module, Design Systems, to place the DS objects that we'll use. Later on, we'll see why there will be several and not just one. Now we can create the one that will determine the style of the Angular application that we'll develop initially for desktop size. Let's call it Travel Agency and define that it will be used for that platform. We now have two Travel Agency DSOs, but we choose the one for the Design Systems module we've just created. All of the more specific web Angular platforms will inherit that DSO. We were able to give this other DSO the same name because we placed it inside a module, but let's rename this one so we don't get confused. Now we're going to create a folder inside the module to organize inside there all the objects with a user interface. First of all, let's create the master panel and name it this way. If I try to save it empty, I'll get this error. It's mandatory to place the content placeholder control, which is where the panels that have this as their master panel will be loaded. Now we'll be allowed to save the object. We're going to create the first panel, Home, which will implement this part of the screen that we saw in Figma. And we have to set it to load inside the master panel that we've just created. That is to say, it'll be loaded in here. Now, in the same way, we'll create the other three panels, which are empty for the moment, and with the same master panel. Well, now we have the KB initialized to start working on each object and implement each layout portion. See you in the next class.